Greetings loyal subscribers and honoured guests. Time for episode 15 of Covertape Chaos Zzapped, where I will be checking out the tape that came with issue 70 of Classic Zap. Before I get there though, let's see what was highlighted on the front cover for this issue. The really big deal this time was the review of Turrican 2 The Final Fight on both formats. I never owned the sequel, but I have played through it in more recent years. It's a fantastic game, especially the bit where it turns into a horizontal shooter and the music kicks in. The Zzapped team gave it a massive and well-deserved rating of 96%. Also mentioned on the cover is the C64 port of Shadow of the Beast, which was released on cartridge at around the same time the C64 GS came out. A friend of mine had it and lent it to me for a while, and I actually enjoyed it more than the Amiga original. I think the difficulty curve was a bit gentler if I remember rightly, and it also had a fantastic SID soundtrack. Zzapped gave this one a respectable 86%, which is probably about right. We've got another 4 games and demos to check out on the Megatape this time around though, so let's get on with it. We're starting things off this time around with the playable demo of Chip's Challenge, the classic puzzle game that started off on the Atari Lynx before being ported out incredibly gracefully to the Commodore 64. There are a staggering 144 stages in the full release, plus a handful of hidden ones as well, which will take puzzle fans an absolute age to work their way through. The objective of each stage is to guide Chip, the main character, around and collect all of the microchips in order to open the door to the next one. More and more obstacles are gradually introduced, such as colour-coded keys and doors, slippery ice, pushable blocks and switches, and a lot more besides. There are items you can collect to aid you in your progress, like spiked boots for walking on the ice, and different types of shield for blocking fireballs and other elemental hazards. The stages get more and more elaborate and fiendish as they go on. I get frustrated with games like this when they start to get tricky, so I am unlikely to ever see them all myself, but at least there is a password system so I can easily get back to the last level I did get to. The visuals are fairly charming, but the playable window is a bit on the small side, and this demo doesn't appear to have any sound or music at all. Ultimately, Chip's Challenge is one of the better puzzle games on the market, and I would rather play it than something like Dizzy, where you not only have puzzles to contend with, but also the jumping controls. Now let's see what the Zzapped reviewers thought of it. Robin had this to say in his mini review. Stuff the mediocre graphics, it's the structure of the game that works so well. Whilst Phil concluded his own thoughts with, this is one challenge that you can't afford to ignore. They gave Chip's Challenge a score of 86% overall and concluded with, tremendous puzzling fun. I would say 86% is about right. Chip's Challenge isn't going to blow anyone away with spectacular presentation, but it does deliver many hours of addictive puzzles if you enjoy that sort of thing. The companion to Chip's Challenge on side A is another full release from Hewson Rack-It by the name of Gulfmaster. We haven't had many sports games on past tapes really, so I thought this made for a nice change of pace. And although at first glance the game can be intimidating with its bank of icons at the top, I found making sense of them was fairly intuitive and the game quite enjoyable. This isn't really like modern day golf games with the familiar swing meter. Instead, you just move an arrow on the compass to indicate the direction that you would like to hit the ball, choose your club, set the power and hit the swing button. Hopefully you will have set things up correctly to hit the ball a good distance without going out of bounds or into a hazard of some kind. I found gauging the amount that I needed to set the power was the trickiest part of the game, but the more I play it, the more I would become attuned to this. There is also wind to contend with, but for the earlier holes at least, this wasn't a factor. I thought this was a solid golf game that I could see myself getting into with a bit more practice, and it would have been decent value for money at a budget price back in the day. Katie Hamza really didn't agree with me at all though and gave Gulfmaster an incredibly mediocre score of 45%. She was comparing it to Leaderboard, according to her the best golf game ever made at that point, and I must confess that I have never played it. By this point both games were the same price of $2.99, so I can see where she's coming from. Let's flip over to side B now. We find another Hewson Rack-It budget release on this side in the form of Herobotics, a game that I have looked at once before on the Commodore format tapes. It's been long enough that I'd forgotten how to play the game though. Your task is to guide the Herobot around the sprawling maze-like complex and find the parts of a weapon needed to destroy the base and make your escape. In order to do this though, quite a lot of exploration and trial and error is needed as you roam around, avoiding or blasting the killer robots, finding computer terminals where you can see the map or shut down conveyor belts, and flip switches to turn off force fields. You can also find teleporters that need to be activated by typing in the correct 5-letter code. In order to really get anywhere, you would need to have a pencil and paper at the ready to help you map out the area and note down the teleporter passwords. It's a bit like a science fiction version of Sabrewolf or a game of that ilk. The visuals are quite nice and there are some convincingly robotic bleeps and bloops, but no in-game music to speak of. Herobotics is another title that offers solid value for money at your $2.99, or of course, free with your favourite C64 magazine. Paul Glancy pointed out that the game is a bit too cerebral to appeal to everyone, but concluded with, "Move your brain from neutral into first gear while playing and you'll enjoy it." Meanwhile, Gordon thought that Herobotics is playable, lasting and enjoyable, continuing the high Rack-It standard. They awarded the game a score of 87% overall and summed up with an appealing mixture of puzzle plus shoot-'em-up action, and another first-class release from Rack-It. I would agree with that, I think. This is a solid game with a lot to offer those willing to put the effort in. That just leaves one more demo now, and it's a bit of a big one. Rounding things off is a massive playable section from the first level of the original Turrican, about 60% of the full level in fact. There's quite a big area for you to explore here, and you'll need to take a leap of faith down a waterfall, explore a cave network, and then come out of the other side before taking down an intimidating boss robot. Luckily though, you have been given infinite lives for the demo, so you can just relax and have fun with it. I appreciate that they've done this. For me, even though the Amiga version is arguably a better game and probably the definitive version, I have more fond memories of the C64 version. When a system can handle a game so easily, it doesn't impress me as much. It's a much bigger feat to have the game of this quality on the C64. It's also the version of the game that I owned personally, though I only managed to get my tape to load a handful of times before it refused to ever load again, which was heartbreaking. It won't really come as a surprise to anyone to discover that Zzapped absolutely loved it when they reviewed it. Robin was ecstatic, stating that Turrican is the sort of game that you expect to find in the arcades. Phil was likewise effusive, finishing off his section with Turrican is good enough to eat. They awarded the game a fantastic score of 97% and said, an utterly awesome shoot-'em-up with a great variety in gameplay as well as the superlative graphics. I agree, it is a fantastic action game and a premium example of what the C64 was capable of in the right hands. That brings yet another episode to a close, and I think this tape was of high quality throughout. The Turrican demo is the real crowd pleaser of course, but my personal pick is Chip's Challenge. There's enough of the game here to offer a solid amount of game time and help you decide if you want to try the full thing. I do think the review of Gulfmaster was a bit harsh though. Herobotics is a solid title too, so overall I would have been very pleased to receive this tape back in the day. I'll see you again in a fortnight for episode 16. In the meantime, take care.